In this video we're going to be looking at episode 2 of La Revolution on Netflix. In this series of videos we've been trying to make sense of whether this supernatural fantasy reimagination of the revolution can be of some value to historians whilst exploring the causes and contexts in which the revolution played out. I've picked out 3 themes that developed in this particular episode, and we'll look at each one in turn to see whether or not these twists and turns in the narratives can be of use to us, historians, and to you, students of the revolution. We'll start off with revolutionary language and discussion itself.
Le monde court à sa perte si les morts reviennent hanter les vivants.
Tant de choses ont changé. L'orphelinat?
Il a été fermé. Versailles préfère financer des fêtes que de subvenir aux besoins de son peuple.
Donc finalement rien n'a changé.
So in this sequence we see Albert, who has been reanimated, brought back from the dead under circumstances we don't fully understand yet, speaking with one of the members of the clergy who was responsible for running the orphanage in which he and his brother were raised up in. We have this great little exchange where the member of the clergy, who again a representative of the first estate in this narrative, is being dismissal of the indulgences of Versailles as a reason for the closure of the orphanage in which the Guillotin brothers were raised in. Now, this is an interesting little take. I mean, the language is a little bit throwaway. It's just sort of reminding us that there is this tension between this idea of class, which is a little bit tricky in France. It doesn't quite correlate to middle, lower, upper working class in the way that we view it today. But it's trying to remind us that there is this antagonism between the classes. But really, in terms of who would be responsible for things like orphanages, more often than not, this would be a matter for the church. And the church was not exactly financially stretched at this point in time. Again, I've been looking around. I haven't seen that much evidence for sort of wide-scale closures of orphanages. If you are aware of a wide-scale range of examples, do let me know in the comments with some sources. I'd be fascinated to see. But generally speaking, this isn't really a major flashpoint or focal point leading into the revolution at all. But nonetheless, it's a useful little reminder that there are these discussions and debates taking place sort of in the background amongst the people in this period. So useful, but I suppose at this stage those revolutionary narratives have not been overt parts of the story, and that's probably something that will come in time. But perhaps it's a little bit surprising that at this stage we haven't seen that much reference to those issues of finances and the indulgences of the elites in a direct way, but I'm sure we'll see more of it as we go.
C'est qui? Comment elle s'appelle?
So the second theme I've drawn out is the use of sign language. Now obviously this isn't much to do with, angry revolutionary themes, but I think it's an interesting contextual detail that's drawn out in the series, and we see it in episode 1 as well. Now, France is not the birthplace of the use of sign language, but certainly as we get to sort of the 1760s, 1770s, there is a version of sign language which has been pioneered in France. I mean, the use of sign language runs back for centuries prior to the revolution, if indeed not thousands of years in some contexts. But really, in a way that we would recognise today, there's certainly a form of sign language that is in liberal use in France by the time in which the story is set in the 1780s. So as I say, it doesn't really do much to sort of drive the wider context forward, but it is a useful reminder of some of the ways in which disability is being confronted and challenged in this particular period, and just highlight from a factually accurate perspective within the story that sign language was a component of day-to-day life for many people in France at this period. So quite useful, and props to La Revolution for developing it in the story. So this final clip introduces the Brotherhood, and it's the first time that we see this mysterious organisation that has been referred to at various times, but this is the first time we sort of really see them in action. We're sort of presuming that the Brotherhood is some sort of manifestation of social unrest leading into the revolution, which is fine. It sort of makes sense that that's being developed. And I'll be interested to see how it develops over the remaining episodes of the series. The scene is sort of this woodland landscape, and it has sort of echoes of the classical, stereotypical Robin Hood narrative of a mysterious figure leading together a rabble band of sort of woods people and common people and sort of rougher and ready people, all hiding out in the woodland together in the middle of the night. That's going to be part of the revolutionary story for sure, but it's not really pointing towards the actual historical reasons for why the revolution took place, which is a far more mundane narrative based around taxation and privilege and voting rights, amongst other things. Social unrest from the bottom up perspective of society in France in the 1780s is for sure part of it, but is it one of the major catalysts? Well, that's a discussion point, and feel free to throw some ideas in the comments section on that as well. But I do think it's an interesting take. It's perhaps the more stereotypical manifestation of the revolution, which I think many people would argue is perhaps more something manifest from the middle classes, as we might recognise them, than it was to do with the lower or working classes, as we might conceive them to be. So I really look forward to seeing how the Brotherhood emerge over the coming episodes, but I think already we're seeing a particular take on where the revolution is coming from, and the sense I get is Netflix's La Revolution is putting it firmly amongst the working lower classes and making this very much a bottom-up narrative. But we'll see what happens. Fingers crossed I'll get to episode 3 much sooner, and we'll try and get a response to that this week as well. But so far, interesting. Is it useful to historians? The jury is still out on that one, but I'm compelled to tune in for another week's worth of episodes and see where it takes us. Yeah, looking forward to it, and look forward to seeing some of your thoughts on how the series is developing up to episode 2. Let's try and avoid spoilers for the remainder of the series. Okay, we'll see you again in about a week on this.